everybody. I hope everyone is having a good Tuesday morning. I've sat here for the past 20 minutes trying to think of how to give this story, and I think I'm just going to give the story straight as news and explain the politics behind what is taking place, because the politics are important here. And it's going to be something that is going to come up, let's say, in the 2020, in the fight for 2020. I can almost guarantee you it's going to be one of the battle lines that are drawn within the Democratic Party itself. Let me explain what I mean. Each morning, sometimes sitting in bed, sometimes sitting in the couch, sometimes over tea, whatever, I'm looking over stories that I want to do for the day. It's like a preliminary run through to see, okay, what's out, what's available, what's interesting to talk about. And within the context of that, what is something that my audience is going to be interested in learning more about, and something that is necessary for them to learn about, or interesting, funny, clever, or something that matters in the grand scheme of things. And this can run the gamut. I mean, it's my channel, and this channel is named after Jamarl Thomas, meaning is all things Jamarl Thomas. But oftentimes, this finds itself in a political space. Well, this is no different. Let's talk about Medicare for all. Now, this is Cenk Uygur, of course. Cenk Uygur is the host and owner of TYT, the Young Turks. At this point, I would imagine everyone who's on the left, whether they like TYT or dislike TYT, knows what TYT is and knows who Cenk Uygur is. Uygur has been ingratiating himself closer into the Democratic Party circles. Now, you can understand why. The moment that you have a show with millions of people, like 4 million people, follow the Young Turks, that gives you a certain amount of political clout and driving a narrative in and of yourself that you want to try to drive home. Unfortunately, that narrative ends up saying vote Clinton. Nevertheless, it's a creature of the Democratic Party. It is what it is. This is Neera Tanden. Neera Tanden is also a creature of the Democratic Party. She is the owner of Center for American Progress, or the CEO of Center for American Progress. That's more accurate. And it being the CEO for Center for American Progress, she also worked on the Clinton campaign in 2008 and was an unofficial, you could say, interactor with the Clinton campaign in 2016. Why am I bringing up these two people? The left has assiduously pushed Medicare for all. We have screamed it at the top of our lungs, and it has become almost a tip of the spear in regards to piercing this kind of almost a litmus test from the standpoint of whoever is running and whoever wants that particular vote. So much so that many of the Democratic contenders have said that they're on board for Medicare for all. They know what's good for them. The number one issue that people were talking about in the 2018 elections was healthcare. That was number one. Now, immigration was number two, but that's because Donald Trump was screaming it at the top of his lungs. But in simultaneous fashion, it was number one because the public was feeling it. Meaning, yes, it is true that we were screaming it, and it's true that we were using it as the tip of our spears. We kind of rammed it through. But the only reason it gained resonance was because people were feeling the bite and the failure of Obamacare to manage their bills in a way that made their life materially better. Meaning, it wasn't a situation where, after all of the heft in order to put Obamacare over the finish line, that their lives became materially better after doing so. This utopian idea that you can keep healthcare insurance companies part of the process while simultaneously restraining the profits of these organizations and making people bills cheaper was utter nonsense. It was found to be somewhat of a fallacy. It is true that it constrained costs more so than if nothing was being done. But the fact of the matter is that the costs were still expanding beyond what people could tolerate. It hurt. It was painful. You have people who decided that they weren't going to get insulin, who weren't going to get medicine, who weren't going to get hospital visits, who weren't going to go to the doctor because they couldn't afford the bill. That's after putting through Obamacare. I'm trying to get this point that after this massive heft, it was still inadequate. It was this incrementalism that these guys were pushing, and the incrementalism didn't do the job. Now, Medicare for all has become one of the main tip of the spears. One thing I would say about Obamacare, it cracked the consciousness of the United States and how it saw itself. There are two things here that I want to talk about. One is the politics. The other one is the human element. For the politics of this, the politics is straightforward. If you're trying to restrain the costs of prescription drugs and hospitalizations and that type of thing, meaning restrain the cost of healthcare, the United States pays twice as much for healthcare than anywhere else in the world, not because we use healthcare more, but because it's for profit. That makes all the sense in the world. You have cancer, you have AIDS, you have some kind of medical condition where you need some kind of treatment. Yes! You're not going to turn me down for that treatment, which means you're a willing participant within this capitalistic endeavor, even though you don't necessarily have a choice within this endeavor. You're going to get healthcare from somewhere, and it is going to bite the moment that you opt to get it. We as a society can do better than that. Medicare for all. We've tried Obamacare. It didn't do the job. They tried to implement Trump Care, which was a shittier version than Obamacare. And the fact of the matter is, if you're going to do it right. Free at the point of service. That is a sea change in regards to how we do our healthcare in this country. And it is an evolution in how we do our healthcare in this country. Don't misunderstand me. It is not free. Let's be very clear on that. It is not free. All of those people who are saying you want free stuff don't know what the hell they're talking about. Ultimately, you are paying for it. You're just paying for it in your taxes. You're not necessarily paying for it as you go to get that pill, as you go to get that treatment. I think there may be still a certain cost in prescriptions, but still, you get my point. You're paying for it with a modest increase in your taxes that you end up paying less totally, even though you're still paying for it in your taxes. Free at the point of service. Again, sea change. It is a litmus test for me. You don't get my vote if you don't toe that line. Not modicum of it, not some variation of it, not I kind of want it. Yes or no. It is a very clear red line for me. Now, corporate Democrats are not taking this line down. Corporate Democrats look at this and have one issue. How do we take the steam out of the sails for Medicare for all? Fact of the matter is 70% of the population is on board for this. How on earth do we take the steams out of the sails? One of the way of taking the steam out of the sails is soothing incrementalism. Let's be more incremental. Let's do Obamacare 2.0, but we're not going to call it Obamacare 2.0. We're going to call it Medicare Extra for All. That's what we're going to call it, and we're going to sell it. Medicare Extra for All. Hey, who needs to change all of this stuff? Let's just, put a public option in. The thing that Obama said he was going to put in the first place and then got rid of it once he got in office. And let's call it Medicare Extra for All, and let's make the case that this is a better solution. The soothing incrementalism is a better option instead of just doing it right. Mind you, you're going to have to change the system in order to make that work anyway, even if you're slapping something on the side of it. Why not just do it right? The incrementalism didn't work the first time, but let's tweak it a second time and see if we can get it straight that time. Now, Neera Tanden responds to an article, I think it was by the New York Times. I'm sorry, is it by the New York Times? Yes, by New York Times. And it was talking about the candidates and essentially this litmus test for Medicare for All. Neera Tanden responds to this article, hey, that's a pretty decent article, but you should have brought up our plan. Our Obama 2.0 that we're calling Medicare Extra for All. That's what you should have brought up. It's a public option. If you ask me, is Obama 2.0 a better plan than the current healthcare plan? I would say yes. If you're asking me if it holds a candle to Medicare for All, I would laugh and I would say no. I'm just saying, it's an incremental system. Let's take a look at the argument. Now, this creates an argument between Uygur, because Uygur gets involved. Uygur, I don't know, I guess he's listening to Neera Tanden when it popped up in his feed. And he responds to Neera Tanden, who responds to him back, who responds back to Neera Tanden. And they get into this kind of battle over the soul of Medicare for All, where Uygur is kind of making the point, your plan doesn't hold a candle to Medicare for All. And let's be very clear, from a political standpoint, the entire point of this plan is to gut and take the wind out of the sails. The healthcare insurance industry has come out for very clear reasons. They're, not unbeknownst to anyone, that If people are paying less for their health care plan because you institute a single-payer system throughout the United States, they lose money. They don't want to lose money. So they're going to do things and support people in back source plans that allows them to remain in the process. Ding, 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 ding. We have our winner. We have a Democrat that's willing to take on this and come up with a solution to how to stop Medicare for all. This is the politics. Incrementalism versus actually just doing it right. Let's take a look at the battle between these two. I thought this was an interesting dynamic. I mean, because both are creatures of the Democratic Party. Uygur, whatever you want to think of him, is trying to move the party to the left. I mean, after all, this is the brand of TYT in this case. And even if those things are incremental, at the very least, between the two dogs that are in this hunt, one dog is backing Medicare for all. I am backing Medicare for all. So clearly, I'm going to be for the dog that's backing Medicare for all in this particular pissing match. But this is literally for the soul of the Democratic Party and what the party is going to back and what the party is going to represent. It is no less than that. And it's a fascinating dynamic between the two. So this is the article itself. I have some thoughts on this good in New York Times piece on healthcare debate in the nascent Democratic primary. First, there's no trade-off between universal healthcare and not ending employer-sponsored coverage. There's a trade-off. I mean, come on, let's be honest. There's a trade-off. They're trying to maximize their profits. Either you're going to curtail those profits or you're not. And I would make the point that you're not going to curtail those profits if they stay within the process, because they're going to work assiduously to expand those profits once again. But okay, that's her belief. There's no trade-off. I think that was the utopian idea under Obamacare that didn't necessarily work. So Center for American Progress comes out with Medicare Extra for All. Medicare Extra for All. Now Uygur gets involved in this conversation. Oh, where is it? Right here. All right, so right here, let's start right here. CAP's Medicare Extra for All allows employees to make this choice to join Medicare or keep health insurance. We're proud that our framework has been introduced in legislation. Well, yeah, there are going to be some corporate Democrats that are putting this through. Cenk Uygur, what it doesn't do is get within miles of universal health care. Private insurers would still be in charge. You still have copays and deductibles. People would have to be excluded, and almost all of the problems we have now. It wouldn't fundamentally change the system to guarantee coverage. Straightforward. She didn't like this. This is utterly false. As a journalist, you should read the plan and stop spreading falsehoods. The plan is here. I've read the plan. Feel free to revise your tweet after actually reading the plan. You may also want to read up on the current Medicare system, which has copays. That's just it. Medicare for All doesn't have copays, which is what he's talking about. Medicare for All is an expanded version of healthcare. It doesn't have copays, which is what he is talking about. Uygur responds to this. Medicare for All doesn't have copays, and that's what I'm comparing your plan to. By doing Medicare for some, you're clearly not covering everyone and leaving current system intact. It's incremental change and very misleading to use Medicare for All language you might want to revise. It is being disingenuous. Call it Obamacare 2.0, call it whatever you want to call it. Don't call it Medicare Extra for All. You're doing that to be disingenuous. The fact of the matter is, naming it disingenuously makes me distrust what you're doing. Just being honest. Neera Tanden continues to be pissy with this. Right here. Uygur puts this. Top Nancy Pelosi aide privately tells insurance executives not to worry about Democrats pushing Medicare for all. Oh, I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. The brutality. Now, the reason why they're saying don't worry about it is because whatever they say, whatever the lefty position that they take while they're out of power, it sounds great because they're out of power. You can do whatever you want. You know that the other party is going to reflexively push back against it. The moment that you get in power is where all of it comes to a head. That's where it's, do you believe it or you don't believe it? In fact of the matter is, I have no belief at all that the Democratic Party has any belief on this stuff at all, on Medicare for all. I think they're fundamentally against it. I think the leadership is fundamentally against it. So I'm not necessarily shocked that the Neera Tanden is coming out in this kind of pit bull way of trying to put a knife in Medicare for all, take the wind out of the sails. Here's the other thing, the person element. How do you see yourself in the context of the larger society? Before Obamacare was enacted into law, Obamacare was a cracking of the consciousness of the public. I say that, but I say it in the sense of it made the public realize that, oh, we can have these things. Like, this is possible within the United States. Even though at the time it was vilified and everything else, at the moment where Trump put his Trump Care out, it picked up steam, meaning Medicare for all picked up more steam. But that picked up steam because of Obamacare initially initiating the process, but not necessarily being adequate to do the job that it was enacted to do. Mainly because it was watered down through corporate stuff. How the public sees itself is dramatically important. How it sees itself, what it believes it deserves, or what it believes it can attain, are drastically important in passing stuff like this, because ultimately it's going to depend on what the public supports. At the end of the day, regardless of how the public sees itself, the public needs to understand that there's no act of God that sets this stuff. This is policy. This is political pressure. This is essentially you pressing yourself on the political edifice itself in order to enact and inflict change. People like Tanden, who's pushing this soothing incrementalism within regards to these, variation plans that are not Medicare for all. Again, question her motives. Question why she's pushing this. And at the end of the day, what do you want? You want to do it right, or you want to be incrementalist? I would say do it right. I'm not going to keep this one long because I have other videos that I want to do and I don't have a long time for today. But this is the battleground that's taking place from the standpoint within the Democratic Party. Plans that are trying to strengthen Obamacare as opposed to actually just doing it right and having Medicare for all. If I fail in my pursuit, meaning if I don't get over the finish line for Medicare for all, but if I get close to it, if something is going to be watered down, I would prefer Medicare for all be watered down, not necessarily some already watered down plan getting watered down. I am perfectly okay with having my litmus test to be Medicare for all, and I suggest you do the same. And don't be kind to people like this who are pushing these kind of lesser evil plans. So I'll end this here. Sick people make me sad they can't dance. Sick people can dance their ass off. Alright, I'm going to end this because I have other ones that I want to do. So if you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. And I'm putting the tweets at the bottom so you can see it for yourself. I'm even putting her plan down so you can read it for yourself. And I'm going to see if I can get someone on the show to discuss her plan versus Medicare for all. I guess I can go through it, but I always like to bring people on because it adds a different dimension to the show. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, this is a lesser incrementalist plan. And I don't necessarily think she would argue with me calling it an incrementalist plan. Maybe, maybe not. But that's what it is. Thanks all.